Pretend to be my girlfriend, the billionaire whispered. But his one rule left her breathless. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The night had that warm gold glow only upscale hotels in Manhattan seem to master, the kind that makes crystal glasses sparkle and everyone look richer than they really are. But Sarah Bennett didn't belong here, not under chandeliers the size of small cars, not in a lobby filled with designer heels tapping across marble floors. She clutched the strap of her thrifted purse tighter, willing it not to snap. Her best friend had begged her to take this last-minute catering shift, promising easy pay, simple gig. But the moment she stepped inside, she knew nothing tonight would be simple. She slipped past a pair of guests arguing about stock prices, her eyes fixed on the service hallway, when a voice like low velvet brushed the back of her neck. "You," it whispered. Sarah stiffened before slowly turning. And there he was, Ethan Ward, billionaire, hotelier, a man whose face she'd only ever seen on magazine covers at the grocery store checkout line, usually under headlines like The Untouchable King of Manhattan or America's Youngest Ice-Hearted CEO. He was taller than she expected, broader too, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her rent for an entire year. And he was staring at her. Not past her. Not through her. At her. "I need your help," he said, stepping close enough that she could smell expensive cologne, fresh cedar, and something darker underneath. Sarah blinked, stunned. "Sir, I'm just with the catering staff." "Not anymore." His jaw tightened, as if he was making a decision no one else in the world would dare challenge him on. "Pretend to be my girlfriend." The words hit her like a gust of cold air. For a split second, she thought she misheard him. "You're what?" Ethan leaned in, voice barely above a breath, eyes flicking toward the ballroom. Doors where dozens of cameras flashed like lightning. "My girlfriend. For the next 2 hours. Maybe less. Just long enough to get through this charity gala." Her heart drummed against her ribs. "Why me?" "Because," he said, his gaze lowering to the catering badge still clipped crookedly to her dress. "You're the only woman in this building who doesn't want something from me." Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it again. This had to be some kind of mistake. Some kind of joke. "I can't just, Mr. Ward. I'm literally holding a tray of champagne." "Drop it," he murmured. She almost did. "I'll compensate you generously. Enough to cover." His eyes swept over her, not judgmental but perceptive, sharp, like he could read the exhaustion in the way she held herself, the faded stitching on her shoes, the way her breath caught when he said the word compensate. "Enough to cover whatever it is you're worried about," he finished quietly. Her throat tightened. She hated that he was right. She hated that her checking account was hovering at $53. She hated that this man, a stranger, could see through her like glass. "There's one rule," Ethan added, and something in his voice shifted, a soft warning wrapped in steel. "You must not fall in love with me." Sarah almost laughed, because how ridiculous was that? But the way he held her gaze made the air thicken, made her pulse flutter in a way she didn't understand. "Do we have a deal?" he asked. And for reasons she couldn't name, reasons she would only understand much, much later, she nodded. "Yes." His hand slid to the small of her back, guiding her toward the ballroom lights as the doors swung open. And just like that, the lie began. The ballroom light hit Sarah like a wave, warm, blinding, and impossibly loud. Laughter mixed with clinking glasses, a string quartet played near the stage, and cameras flashed the moment Ethan Ward stepped inside with her on his arm. She felt his hand at the small of her back, steady and intentional, guiding her forward as dozens of eyes pivoted toward them. The billionaire who never brought dates to public events was suddenly arriving with a woman no one recognized. Sarah's pulse hammered so hard she felt it in her throat. "Just breathe," Ethan murmured without looking at her, his voice calm, controlled. "People smell fear." "Great," she whispered back through a stiff smile. "Good thing I left my fear at home." A soft sound escaped him, almost a laugh, and it startled her more than his original proposal. She wondered briefly if anyone else had ever heard him laugh. Before she could process it, a pair of guests swept in. A glamorous brunette with diamond earrings worth more than Sarah's car assessed her with a slow up and down. "Ethan," she purred. "You never told us you were bringing someone." Ethan tightened his hand on Sarah's back in a way that said, "Just trust me." "This is Sarah Bennett," he said. "My girlfriend." Sarah nearly tripped, but Ethan's grip steadied her. She forced a smile, praying it did not look like panic. The brunette's brows lifted in surprise, perhaps suspicion. "And what do you do, Sarah?" Sarah froze. She could not say she served canapes 15 minutes ago. Ethan answered for her, smooth as silk. "She is a photographer," he said. Sarah's head jerked slightly. "Photographer?" Ethan continued. "She has a very private style. Intimate portraits. Emotional depth." His eyes flicked to her, silently telling her to play along. She nodded with a polite smile. "Yes, exactly." She had no idea what that meant. The brunette smiled, though it did not reach her eyes. "How interesting. You must show us your portfolio sometime." Sarah smiled tighter. "It is very exclusive." Ethan's subtle smirk told her she said the right thing. As they moved deeper into the ballroom, Sarah whispered, "A photographer?" It was the first thing that came to mind. "Really? Not doctor, lawyer, astronaut." "You did not look like an astronaut." "And what does a photographer look like?" He glanced at her for the first time since they walked in, eyes briefly sweeping her face. "Someone who notices details." She wanted to ask what details he thought she noticed, but a rush of reporters surged toward them. Microphones rose, cameras flashed, and Sarah felt Ethan shift. In a fraction of a second, he was no longer the whispering man in the lobby. He became the public version of himself. Controlled, polished, untouchable. "Mr. Ward, you are rarely seen with company. Is this a serious relationship?" Ethan's hand slid from her back to take her hand, threading their fingers together. Her breath hitched. His voice was steady when he answered, "Yes. She is very important to me." Sarah's knees weakened, even though she knew it was all an act. Another reporter asked, "Where did you two meet?" Ethan opened his mouth, but Sarah stepped in before he could speak, surprising them both. "A coffee shop in Brooklyn," she said. "He complained about the temperature of his drink. I told him he was being dramatic." A ripple of laughter moved through the small crowd. Ethan stared at her, eyes narrowing with something like amusement. "And I fell in love instantly," he added with perfect timing. The reporters reacted exactly as expected, firing more questions, snapping more photos, but Sarah barely heard any of it. Because for a moment, the way he looked at her did not feel like acting at all. Then his hand squeezed hers once, lightly, reminding her this was a role, a temporary lie, a deal sealed in a whisper. "Stay close," he murmured. "Tonight is only beginning." And as he led her toward the stage where a spotlight waited, Sarah had the chilling sense that nothing about her life would ever be the same again. Sarah felt the spotlight warming her face as Ethan guided her toward the front of the ballroom, his hand never leaving hers, his posture composed but tense in a way she could feel rather than see. The charity host introduced him with a flourish, praising his contributions to the foundation, and guests applauded while Sarah stood just behind him, trying to look like she belonged beside a man who seemed born for grand stages. Ethan delivered a brief speech, smooth and confident, but Sarah sensed the undercurrent of anxiety beneath his perfect exterior, like he needed her presence for more than just a staged relationship. When he stepped back, he offered his arm again, and she took it because she had no idea what else to do. The moment they returned to the main floor, conversations swarmed them. Wealthy donors, board members, people whose names she recognized only from news articles. They asked about their relationship, about her work, about vacations they supposedly took together, and each time Sarah felt her pulse jump, Ethan answered without hesitation. "Sarah loves the ocean," he said. "She makes me go outside," he said. "She is the reason I learned how to relax," he said. "Relax?" Sarah nearly choked on her sparkling water. Ethan never looked relaxed. Not even now. But he delivered every line with that billionaire steadiness, a flawless performance that made her wonder how often he pretended for the world. As the crowd shifted, Sarah noticed an older man approaching, his expression sharp, assessing. Ethan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Who is that?" she whispered. "Carter Hale," Ethan murmured back. "Chairman. Thinks he owns everything, including me." Sarah straightened her shoulders. "Then I guess I should smile." "Yes," Ethan said quietly. "But do not let him intimidate you." Carter Hale shook Ethan's hand before turning to Sarah with a patronizing smile. So this is the young woman who finally convinced Ethan Ward to settle down. His tone made it sound like an accusation. Sarah met his gaze steadily. We are very happy together. Carter's smile did not move. Of course. And what exactly do you do, my dear? Sarah could feel Ethan tense beside her, ready to step in again, but something inside her refused to let this man belittle her. I create portraits, she said, holding Carter's stare. I capture people honestly. Most people do not like to see themselves without their filters. A flicker of surprise crossed Carter's face. Ethan's grip on her hand tightened with something like approval. Honesty, Carter said slowly, can be dangerous in our world. Or necessary, Sarah replied. Carter gave Ethan a long, heavy look. She is different, Ethan. I wonder how long that will last. With that, he turned and walked away. Sarah let out a slow breath, her heart still pounding. What was that about? He was testing you, Ethan said, guiding her to a quieter corner near the balcony doors. He tests everyone who gets close to me. Does anyone ever pass? Ethan looked at her, and for the first time tonight, there was no performance in his expression, no polished billionaire mask. No, he said quietly. Not until now. The music shifted to a slow orchestral piece, and couples drifted onto the dance floor. Ethan hesitated, then extended his hand. Dance with me. Sarah swallowed hard. I do not know how to waltz. Good, he said. Neither do I. He led her gently, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers in a way that made her breath come shallow. They moved slowly among the other couples, and she became acutely aware of every point where their bodies aligned, every breath he exhaled, every time his gaze dipped to her lips before darting away again. You are doing well, he murmured. For someone who picked a catering shift over a date with a billionaire 3 hours ago. I did not exactly get a choice, she whispered. You asked me to pretend. Yes, Ethan said softly, his eyes locked on hers. But you are doing far more than pretending. The air tightened between them, a tension so real it made her stomach flutter. She was about to ask what he meant when a voice cut through the music, sharp and cold. Ethan, a word. A woman stood a few feet away, tall, elegant, and furious. Ethan's posture stiffened. Sarah's fingers slipped from his hand, instinctively. The woman's eyes zeroed in on Sarah with the precision of a blade. So this is the girl, she said. The one you think will save you. Sarah's heart stumbled. Save him from what? Ethan stepped forward slightly, shielding Sarah. This is not the time, Victoria. It never is, the woman hissed. But your little performance ends tonight. And as Sarah watched the tension crackle between them, she realized one terrifying truth. This lie was about to get very real, very fast. Sarah stood frozen as Victoria's words sliced through the music, the kind of words that could unravel everything with a single breath. Guests nearby pretended not to listen, but their stolen glances revealed the truth. Everyone was watching. Everyone was waiting. Victoria stepped closer, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor, her expression a perfect blend of confidence and disdain. She looked like someone who had known Ethan Ward for years, maybe long enough to believe she had some claim over him. Ethan, this charade has gone on long enough, she said, folding her arms. Your shareholders are questioning your decisions. The board is concerned. And this, her gaze flicked to Sarah, cold and merciless. This little performance is not helping your reputation. Sarah swallowed, her fingertips cold. I am standing right here, she said quietly. Victoria tilted her head with a practiced smile. Yes, I know. Ethan stepped in front of Sarah, his voice low but steady. Victoria, you are out of line. I am out of line, she echoed with a disbelieving laugh. I have been the one cleaning up your messes for years. And now you show up with a woman who has no background check, no connections, no status. Ethan, do you even understand what this looks like? Sarah felt her stomach twist. No background check. No status. Those words landed harder than she expected, reminding her just how far her world was from his. Ethan's voice sharpened. She is with me. That is all anyone needs to understand. Victoria's smile thinned. Is that what you told Carter Hale? Because he is already asking questions. Ethan stiffened at the mention of the chairman, and Victoria caught the reaction instantly. You see, this is exactly the problem. If you want to keep this company, you cannot afford distractions. Then she leaned in, whispering just loud enough for both Ethan and Sarah to hear. especially ones who cannot help you. Something in Ethan snapped. Sarah could feel it in the sudden tension that rolled off him, in the way his jaw locked, in the way his hand curled slightly at his side. "We are done here," he said. "Leave." But Victoria only stepped closer, lowering her voice even more. "You cannot protect her forever, Ethan. And you cannot pretend your feelings are not getting in the way. This is not you. This is desperation." Sarah's breath caught. Desperation? Ethan grabbed Sarah's hand. "We are leaving." He guided her through the crowd, ignoring the curious stares, pushing through the ballroom doors and out into the quieter hallway where only dim lights and distant echoes remained. Once they were alone, he stopped, running a hand through his hair as if he needed a moment to reset. Sarah watched him carefully. She had never seen him rattled. "Not like this." "Ethan," she said softly. "What did she mean save you?" Ethan looked away, his shoulders tense. "It is nothing you need to worry about. You dragged me into your world without warning," she said, stepping closer. "Do not tell me I should not worry about things that are clearly falling apart around you." He let out a slow, frustrated breath. "The company is under pressure. The board thinks I am too unpredictable, too private. They want someone stable, someone with a public image that calms investors." Sarah stared at him. "So you brought me because I look harmless." Ethan met her eyes for a long, uneasy moment. "I brought you because you looked real," he said. "Not curated, not strategic. Real." Her chest tightened unexpectedly. But before she could respond, he added, "And because I needed to prove I could commit to someone, even if it is only pretend." Sarah blinked. "So, I am your evidence." "You are more than that." His voice was quiet, almost a confession he did not want to admit. Sarah was about to ask what he meant when the hallway door burst open. A young man in a suit rushed in, out of breath. "Mr. Ward, sir, there is an issue. Carter Hale wants to address the board tonight. He is calling an emergency vote. They are saying it is about your leadership." Sarah felt her heart stop. Ethan's expression darkened, and for a moment the polished billionaire facade cracked completely. "Of course he does," Ethan muttered. "He saw me with you." Sarah's stomach twisted. Had she caused this? "Ethan, should I go?" He looked at her sharply. "No. Stay where I can see you." "Why?" His answer came low, steady, and startling. "Because tonight, the only person in that ballroom I can actually trust is you." Sarah felt the weight of those words press into her, heavier than diamonds, heavier than the chandeliers above them. And before she could speak, he offered his arm again, not as an act for cameras, not as a performance, but as someone quietly reaching for an anchor. "We are going back in," he said. "Together." She took his arm, her pulse unsteady, and as they walked toward the doors, she could feel the shift, subtle but undeniable. The line between pretend and real was beginning to blur. The moment Ethan and Sarah stepped back into the ballroom, the atmosphere had shifted. Conversations dimmed into whispers, eyes flicked toward them with thinly veiled curiosity, and Carter Hale stood near the stage speaking in low, urgent tones with several board members. Ethan's posture straightened, his hand still firm around Sarah's, as if letting go would make everything collapse faster. Sarah could feel him calculating, bracing, choosing his next move with the precision of someone who had lived his entire life under scrutiny. She leaned in slightly, keeping her voice low. "What exactly is Carter trying to do?" Ethan's eyes stayed forward. "He is trying to use tonight to question my leadership in front of donors and investors. If he convinces the board that I am unstable or reckless, he can force a vote to remove me." Sarah's breath caught. "Remove you? As in from your own company?" Ethan nodded once. "He has wanted control for years. Tonight he sees an opening." Her stomach tightened. She had never imagined that pretending to be someone's girlfriend for 2 hours could affect anything this serious. But now she could feel the weight of the moment pressing on both of them. Ethan guided her toward a quieter area near the back, though eyes still followed them like spotlights. "You do not have to stay," Ethan said quietly. "This is not your fight." Sarah shook her head. "You are the one who said I am the person you trust tonight. So do not push me away now." Ethan looked at her then, really looked, as if he was trying to decide whether she meant it. And whatever he saw in her eyes steadied him. Before either of them could speak again, Carter Hale's voice boomed across the ballroom as he stepped on stage and tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. I apologize for interrupting the evening, but I have a matter of urgency to address." Sarah felt Ethan tense immediately. Carter continued. Our company stands at a critical juncture, and leadership matters now more than ever. Recent behavior and public displays have raised concerns. His eyes slid deliberately toward Ethan and Sarah. Guests murmured as camera flashes sparked like small bursts of lightning. We must decide whether our current leadership still reflects the values of this company. Sarah felt fire crawl up her spine. Every word was a knife crafted to cut Ethan down slowly and humiliatingly. She looked up at Ethan, expecting him to storm forward, but he did not. Instead, his jaw tightened, his breathing deepened, and he whispered, "Do not move." Carter raised a hand. Therefore, I am requesting an emergency vote with the board tonight to evaluate whether Ethan Ward's position should be reconsidered. A gasp spread across the room like a ripple. Sarah felt the shock sting her chest. Ethan stepped forward, but Sarah gently touched his arm to ground him. For the first time since arriving, his anger cracked through the billionaire composure. He planned this, Ethan murmured, voice edged like glass. He wanted me distracted tonight, so he could pull this. Carter kept speaking. This vote is not personal. It is simply what is best for the company. Sarah had heard lies before, but this one was so skillfully delivered that if she did not know Ethan, she might have believed it. Ethan finally stepped toward the stage, but before he made it more than a few steps, Sarah moved with him. He glanced back in surprise. You are coming? She held his gaze. You said together. Something softened in his expression, something he quickly masked before they approached the front. Board members watched them approach, some curious, some disapproving, and Carter paused mid-sentence as Ethan stopped at the edge of the stage. If you want to question my leadership, Ethan said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the room, then have the courage to do it honestly, not behind vague statements and insinuations. Carter smiled coldly. Then by all means, explain tonight. Sarah froze as Carter gestured toward her. Explain this spontaneous romance that appeared without warning. Explain why no one has ever heard of this woman until today. Ethan took a breath, ready to speak, but Sarah stepped forward before she realized what she was doing. May I say something? She asked loudly enough for the room to hear. The board murmured. Carter's smile faltered. Ethan stared at her with a mixture of shock and something warmer beneath it. Sarah lifted her chin. You want to know who I am? That is fair. But do not pretend this is about me. This is about control. And everyone here knows it. Carter's eyes narrowed. Sarah continued, her voice steady despite the quiver in her chest. You talk about values, but you are attacking Ethan for doing the one thing you claim leaders should do. Show humanity. Show connection. Show that he is not a machine built for profit and politics. A few guests nodded subtly. Carter tried to interrupt, but Sarah raised her voice. You can question me all you want. My job, my background, my status. But you do not get to weaponize Ethan's personal life in front of a room full of strangers just to grab power. Silence felt like a dropped curtain. Ethan stared at her as if he was seeing her for the very first time. Carter opened his mouth, but his next words were drowned out by a sudden wave of applause from several tables. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to shift the room, enough to rattle the board, enough to throw Carter off rhythm. Sarah's heart hammered as the applause grew. Ethan stepped beside her, his voice calm, but carrying a hint of awe. Thank you, he whispered. And for the first time that night, Sarah felt something shift between them, something she could not name yet, but could feel deep in her chest. Something that felt dangerously, undeniably real. The applause faded slowly, like distant thunder rolling away, but the impact of it stayed thick in the air as Sarah and Ethan stepped off the stage together. Ethan kept his hand wrapped around hers, not as part of an act, not for show, but because in that moment it felt like the only steady thing he had left. The board members were scattered across the ballroom, some whispering urgently to one another, others watching Ethan with unreadable expressions. Carter Hale was nowhere to be seen, which was its own warning bell. Ethan exhaled, running a hand along the back of his neck. He is regrouping, he murmured. He does not like being challenged publicly. Sarah looked up at him, her voice low. Do you think what I said helped? Ethan turned to her fully, his eyes steady and sharper now that the immediate chaos had quieted. You did more than help. You shifted the entire room. People listened to you. They believed you. Sarah felt heat rise under her cheeks, unsure what to do with the intensity of his gaze. I just said what needed to be said. No. Ethan said, shaking his head. You said what I have not been able to say for years. He paused, searching her face with an expression so disarming she had to look away. You were brave. For me. You did not have to be. Sarah did not know how to answer that. So she focused instead on the clusters of guests drifting back into conversations, though the tension in the room never fully dissolved. Their eyes still followed Ethan, still evaluated him. Yet every time someone glanced at Sarah, there was something different in their stare. Less doubt, more curiosity, maybe even respect. Before Sarah could ask Ethan what came next, a woman in her late 50s approached them. Her posture was elegant, calm, and she wore the kind of quiet authority that came from years of boardroom battles. Mr. Ward, she said, offering a nod, we should speak. Privately. Ethan straightened slightly. Of course, Ms. Langford. She looked at Sarah next. And instead of the disdain Sarah feared, there was something closer to thoughtful interest. You may come as well, she said. Ethan blinked. Sarah blinked. Board members did not typically invite date props to private conversations about leadership votes. As they followed Ms. Langford through a side hallway toward a smaller lounge, Sarah whispered, Why does she want me there? Ethan whispered back, I have no idea. Inside the lounge, 3 other board members were already waiting. They greeted Ethan politely before turning towards Sarah, observing her like analysts studying a crucial variable in an equation. Ms. Langford folded her hands. Ethan, the board is not blind. We know Carter Hale is grasping for control. We know he has been waiting for an opportunity to undermine you. Ethan remained still, though his guarded expression eased slightly. Then why entertain his vote? Because, Ms. Langford said carefully, he made a valid point about your isolation. Your tendency to stand alone. To work alone. Investors do not like unpredictability. Sarah looked at Ethan. The words were gentle, but they hit like small, quiet truths. Ms. Langford continued, But tonight, we saw something different. We saw you allow someone in. Her eyes drifted to Sarah, and we saw her stand up for you in a room full of strangers. That speaks volumes. Ethan shifted, glancing toward Sarah in a way that made her chest feel too tight. Another board member added, If your relationship is genuine, it strengthens your position. It shows stability. Humanity. Sarah nearly choked. Genuine. Ethan cleared his throat, tension flickering across his jaw. We have known each other only briefly, he admitted. Sarah felt the words like a cold splash of water. He was telling the truth. He had to. But the truth still stung. Before she could step back emotionally, Ethan added, But what she did tonight was real. Sarah's breath stalled. His voice was steady, sincere, without the polished veneer he used for cameras. She did not do it for status. She did it because she believed in what was right. That is the kind of person I trust. And that is the kind of person this company should value. Silence followed, heavy and contemplative. Ms. Langford exchanged glances with the other board members. Finally, she said, Very well. We will postpone Carter's vote. For now. Ethan exhaled slowly, and Sarah saw the relief touch his shoulders. Before he masked it away, the board members excused themselves, leaving Ethan and Sarah alone in the quiet lounge. For a moment neither spoke. Then Ethan turned toward her. You saved my career tonight. His voice was rough, low. Sarah shook her head. I did not do it for your company. Ethan stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking until she could feel the warmth of him. Then why? Sarah opened her mouth, but no answer came. Not because she did not know, but because the truth scared her. Ethan watched her, his expression softening as if he could read the conflict in her silence. He lifted a hand slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. Sarah, he said quietly, the rule I gave you. The one about not falling in love with me. Her heart tripped violently. Yes. His eyes lowered to her lips for a fraction of a second before returning to hers. I am starting to think that rule was meant for me, not you. Sarah's breath caught entirely, the air around them charged like static before a storm. But before she could respond, the lounge door clicked open. Victoria stepped inside, her expression thunderous. Do not get comfortable, she snapped. Because everything you think you won tonight is about to fall apart. And in that moment, Sarah knew the battle was far from over. Victoria's heels struck the floor like warning shots as she stormed into the lounge, her glare slicing through the charged quiet where Sarah and Ethan stood far too close for Victoria's comfort. She shut the door behind her with a sharp click, then crossed her arms, eyes burning with accusation. "You think tonight went in your favor?" she said, her voice low but laced with venom. "You have no idea what you have started." Ethan stepped forward instantly, shielding Sarah with a protective instinct that surprised even him. "Victoria, leave. This is not your decision anymore." She laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "Not my decision? Ethan, you are about to walk into a disaster, and you are too blinded by this girl to see it." Sarah stiffened at the word girl, her pulse accelerating. "I am standing right here," she said quietly, refusing to shrink back. "Yes," Victoria snapped, "and that is the problem." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Enough. You do not talk to her that way." But Victoria only turned her glare on him. "The board postponed the vote because of her little speech, yes. But Carter is not backing down. He is furious. He is calling investors. He is contacting the press. And tomorrow morning, Ethan, everything, your leadership, your credibility, your company, will be thrown into a public storm you cannot control." Sarah felt the words hit Ethan like physical blows. She could feel his tension, could see the storm gathering behind his eyes. Victoria continued, her tone softening just slightly, revealing something beneath the hostility, fear. "I know you, Ethan. I know how much you have fought for this company. I know how much you have sacrificed. And it kills me to see you throw it all away for something that is not even real." Sarah's stomach twisted. Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but Victoria cut him off, her voice cracking for the first time. "You think this is about jealousy? You think I care that you brought someone? Ethan, the issue is that you are putting the fate of a multi-billion-dollar corporation in the hands of a complete stranger." The sting of those words made Sarah's eyes burn. She hated the way they made sense. She hated that part of her wondered the same thing. Ethan stepped closer to Victoria, his voice softer but firmer. "Sarah is not the issue. Carter is. And I will handle him." "How?" Victoria demanded. "With charm? With speeches? With the hope that this woman will bail you out again." Sarah felt the blow, unexpected and sharper than she expected. Ethan turned to her, sensing the shift in her breathing. "Sarah, do not listen to her." But Sarah was listening, and the deeper truth in Victoria's words sank in with quiet, steady pain. Victoria continued, her voice cold again. "Tell me, Sarah, do you even understand what it means to be tied to someone like Ethan Ward? Do you understand what the press will do to you? What the investors will say about you? Your life will not be yours anymore. You will have reporters outside your door. People will dig into your past, your job, your finances. They will not care about the truth. They will care about the story." Sarah felt the air drain from her lungs. "Victoria," Ethan warned. "No," Sarah whispered, her voice cracking despite her effort to stay calm. "She is right." Ethan turned to her sharply. "Do not say that." "Ethan," Sarah said, stepping back from him, her hand slipping from his. "I came here for a catering shift. I did not sign up to become the headline of a corporate war. This is not my world. I cannot survive in it." His expression darkened with something like fear. "Sarah, listen to me. You said the board postponed the vote," Sarah said quietly. "But if me being here is making everything worse," her voice almost broke, "then maybe the best thing I can do is step back." Ethan's breath hitched. "No, I do not want distance. I want you with me." She closed her eyes for a moment, pained by the honesty in his voice, pained by her own heart betraying her. "Ethan," she whispered, "I cannot be the reason you lose everything you built." She turned to leave, needing air, needing distance, needing anything that was not his eyes pleading with her. Ethan reached for her wrist, but she gently pulled away. "I am sorry." The words slipped out like a whisper she hoped he would not hear. Victoria watched silently, her expression unreadable, as Sarah walked out of the lounge and disappeared into the hallway. Ethan took a step forward, ready to chase her, but Victoria's voice stopped him cold. "If you follow her now," she said softly, "you will lose everything tonight." Ethan stood there, frozen between the world he built and the woman who had just walked away from it. And for the first time in years, he did not know which one he could live without. Sarah did not remember how she made it from the lounge to the far end of the hotel corridor. She only remembered the pressure in her chest, the way her pulse felt like it was echoing in her ears, and the quiet humiliation of hearing her fears spoken out loud by someone who clearly belonged in Ethan's world. She pushed open a side door that led to a dim, quiet terrace overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Cold air rushed against her skin, giving her something sharp to hold on to as her thoughts spun out of control. She wrapped her arms around herself, staring at the glittering city lights below. This was not her life. This was not her world. And yet a part of her hated how much. She wanted to stay in it, not for the chandeliers or the gowns or the power swirling behind closed doors, but because of Ethan. She heard the door open behind her and winced, expecting Victoria's cutting voice or a staff member asking her to leave. But instead, footsteps approached slowly, hesitantly. "Sarah." Ethan's voice carried a quiet weight, heavier than any command he had given all night. She did not turn around. "You should be inside," she said softly. "Your future is being decided in there." "My future walked out the door," he said, and she felt her breath falter. He stepped beside her, not touching her, but close enough that the warmth of him pushed against the cold night air. "I am sorry," he said. "I should not have let Victoria talk to you like that. I should have stopped her sooner." Sarah shook her head. She was telling the truth. "No," Ethan said firmly. "She was telling her truth. Not yours. And not mine." His voice softened as he continued. "Sarah, do you think I brought you here because I needed a prop? A distraction? Something to wave in front of the board?" She swallowed hard. "Is that not why you asked me?" Ethan hesitated, then exhaled. "At first, yes. I needed someone who was not part of this world. Someone the board could not accuse of ulterior motives. Someone real." Sarah flinched, but Ethan continued before she could respond. "But something changed. Tonight, when you stood up on that stage, you did not just defend me. You saw me. You understood me. And I have not felt understood by anyone in a very long time." Sarah stared at the skyline, unable to look at him. "Ethan, your world is dangerous. It chews people up. I saw that in Victoria's eyes. I felt it in the ballroom. I do not belong there." Ethan stepped in front of her, forcing her to meet his gaze. "Neither do I." She blinked. "What? You think I enjoy being a headline? You think I enjoy being a symbol instead of a person? You think I like pretending my life is made of steel when half the time I feel like I am barely holding everything together?" Sarah's eyes softened with something like recognition. Ethan continued, voice low and unguarded. "The board wants a puppet. Investors want a perfect reputation. Carter wants control. And tonight I realized something. I am tired of letting everyone else decide who I am supposed to be." Sarah's pulse quickened. "And what does that have to do with me?" Ethan's expression deepened with quiet certainty. "Everything." Before she could respond, the terrace door burst open. Victoria stepped through, breathless, eyes sharp with something close to panic. "Ethan," she said, "we have a problem." Ethan tensed. "What now?" "Carter just went public," she said, pulling out her phone. "He contacted a financial news outlet. They are about to publish a story questioning your leadership and implying that your new relationship is a fabrication to manipulate the board." Sarah's stomach dropped. "A fabrication," she whispered. Victoria nodded grimly. "He is trying to frame this entire night as a stunt. And if that story hits, the postponed vote will not matter. The board will have enough pressure from investors to force you out within hours." Ethan clenched his jaw. "He thinks he can destroy me before morning." Victoria looked between them, her voice quieter. "He can't, unless you do something right now to prove him wrong." Sarah felt the air shift, felt the weight of what Victoria was implying. "She means us," Sarah whispered. "She means our relationship." Victoria nodded once. "If you want to survive this, your relationship cannot just look real. It must be undeniably real." Ethan's eyes locked onto Sarah's, the city lights reflecting in his gaze like distant stars. Slowly, he reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "Then let us tell the truth," he said. Sarah's breath caught. "The truth." Ethan stepped closer, his voice steady, vulnerable, sincere. "I do not want to pretend anymore. Not about tonight. Not about you." The world seemed to still around them, the wind quieting, the noise of the ballroom fading beneath the weight of the moment. Victoria watched silently, her usual sharpness softened by something like reluctant respect. Ethan lifted Sarah's hand, his thumb brushing her knuckles. "Sarah," he said softly, "I want whatever this is to be real. Not for the board. Not for the company. For us." And as the night stretched around them, a soft, trembling truth finally surfaced in Sarah's chest. She wanted it too. But before she could speak, the terrace door opened once more, and a staff member rushed out in a panic. Mr. Ward, he said breathlessly, the press is already calling. They want a statement from you and your girlfriend. Now. Sarah froze. Ethan squeezed her hand. Then we will give them one, he said. Together. And with that, he led her back inside, into the storm, waiting to test every word they had not yet spoken aloud. The moment Ethan and Sarah stepped back inside the hotel, they were met with a wall of tension thick enough to feel in their bones. Staff members rushed back and forth with phones pressed to their ears. Board members whispered urgently in tight circles, and flashes from early arriving reporters began to strobe against the marble like a warning. Ethan tightened his grip on Sarah's hand, grounding himself with the only steady thing left in the chaos. The hotel's public relations director, a man in a navy suit with panic barely concealed in his eyes, hurried over. Mr. Ward, the news outlet is about to publish. They are claiming your relationship is staged to manipulate corporate votes. Several investors are asking for a statement immediately. Ethan nodded once. Then bring them all into the main hall. Investors, reporters, anyone who needs to hear the truth. The director blinked. A press conference? Right now? Yes, Ethan said, right now. Within minutes, the ballroom transformed into a storm of cameras, microphones, and restless voices. Sarah stood beside Ethan at the makeshift podium, her heart pounding so hard she wondered if the microphone would pick it up. She could feel the heat of every stare, every suspicion, every question forming behind impatient eyes. Carter Hale stood near the back, arms crossed, a smug satisfaction tightening his jaw. He thought he had already won. Ethan spoke first, voice steady and controlled. Thank you for coming. Tonight has been filled with speculation, assumptions, and accusations. So let us clear a few things up. He looked directly toward the reporters. My relationship with Sarah Bennett is not a fabrication. It is not a strategy. It is not a distraction. It is something real that began long before Carter Hale attempted to weaponize it for his own agenda. Sarah felt her breath hitch. His words were not polished corporate lines. They were raw, unfiltered truth. A reporter immediately raised a hand. Mr. Ward, sources say you only met her tonight. Are you saying that is false? Ethan glanced at Sarah, not asking permission, but giving her control. She stepped forward. Yes, we met tonight, she said clearly. But the connection we made was real. I stood up there earlier because I believed in him as a person, not as a CEO. I saw someone fighting to be more than a title. Murmurs echoed across the room. Another reporter asked, Miss Bennett, what is your background? Why should investors trust you? Sarah inhaled, steadying her voice. I am not asking for their trust, she said. I am not here to become part of the company. I am not here to gain anything. I am here because Ethan asked me to stand by him, and I chose to. Ethan stepped closer, his presence warm at her side. The board postponed the vote because they saw what Carter refuses to acknowledge. Leadership is not just about numbers and controlled appearances. It is about honesty, humanity, stability. And Sarah has shown more courage and integrity tonight than many people who have spent their entire lives in boardrooms. Carter stepped forward, voice sharp. This is not about courage. This is about recklessness. You are risking billions on a whim. Ethan faced him, unflinching. No, Carter. I am risking nothing. Because unlike you, I do not believe humanity is a weakness. A ripple of applause started at one table, then another, until it spread through half the room. Reporters scribbled furiously. Investors exchanged looks. Carter's face paled. Ms. Langford, the board member who had shown Sarah surprising respect earlier, approached the podium. Effective immediately, she announced. The board sees no grounds to move forward with Carter Hale's emergency vote. Ethan Ward retains full leadership authority. Carter stiffened, realizing the tide had turned. Ms. Langford added, her voice firm, and we will be investigating the source of tonight's leak. Carter pushed past the crowd, fury darkening his expression, but no one followed him. No one supported him. Sarah felt a weight lift from her chest as relief washed through the room like warm sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Ethan turned to her quietly, the world around them fading into a distant hum. You did that, he whispered. No, she said softly. We did that. Ethan took her hands gently, right there in front of flashbulbs and microphones, as if the entire chaotic world behind them no longer mattered. Sarah, he said, voice warm and sure. There is no rule anymore. Not tonight. Not ever. Her breath trembled as she whispered, "Then what do you want, Ethan?" He smiled, a real one she had never seen until now. "I want you. Not as a pretend girlfriend. Not as a shield. As the woman who stood up for me when I could not stand up for myself. The woman who made me feel something real again." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, but this time they were from something bright, something soft, something she had not felt in years. She squeezed his hands. "Then I am yours," she whispered. Reporters gasped. Cameras flashed, but not one part of the moment felt staged. Ethan leaned his forehead to hers, closing the last distance gently, reverently, as the room quieted in awe. "Together," he whispered. "Together," she said. And with those words, the lie they began became the truth they chose. The ballroom erupted into applause as Ethan kissed her, not for the cameras, not for the board, but for the first time as something honest, something deep, something that felt like the beginning of a promise neither of them ever expected to find. And for the first time that night, everything felt exactly, breathtakingly real.